want to get some of the good shit too.
Yeah,
but
well, I gotta tell you, this actually, in fact, it was my wife said it while I was thinking it, and she's like, "I'm googling that bitch Radish."
Oh yeah,
out, because I honestly believe she's the sole reason that
she's the culprit. She's the big culprit.
I think this is she's what put him away. And when we started watching this, when I sat down to watch it, I was actually going into it with, yeah, this guy did it.
Yeah, I mean, so was I for sure.
My mindset sitting down, and as it went on, that changed.
I mean, I knew it was a real case just from the fact that like this is like the new trend now. They're like taking all these real cases and building series and podcasts and all kinds of things around them. So part of me is not even really sure how I feel about the fact that I enjoyed watching this. But it also came on the heels of watching Evil Genius, which was another one of your recommendations, actually. And it was, now that one, what I liked about it was 4 episodes, but I didn't realize, they needed 13. They needed I think originally it was 10. The 3 episodes that got added are the new pieces, the last 3 episodes, and that's why it's on Netflix now, I think.
Yeah, post-trial.
Yeah, fucking nuts, though. This whole thing is crazy. So anyway, yeah, I guess, if we want to do it in 4 episode chunks, let me just let me pause where I'm at now.
All right.
And do quickly look at the look at the overviews of those 4 episodes.
Yeah, because I said once we finish episode 4, episode 5 starts in the trial.
Okay, yeah, and so all right, yeah. So even just looking at the titles, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember what happens in that one. Oh yeah, I remember that one too. Holy fucking shit. All right, cool. Episodes 1 through 4, fine, that's perfect.
I mean, I think Evil Genius we can do a 1-show wrap on, but this,
right?
By the time I got to like episode 6. I was like, yeah, this is not
so cut and dry, man. It's not so easy to see what's up with this one.
Yeah. And I even go back, I even went back and forth a couple times in my belief until the exhumation in Texas. To me, that was like,
sealed it. That sealed it for. Wow. All right. Well, cool. I think obviously because we've both watched the whole thing, it'll be hard to not have stuff from beyond episode 4 bleed in here and there, but I don't think that that's really a problem, right, as long as we focus on 1 through 4. Oh, hold on a second. My headphones are my headphone jack is a little bit on the loose side on this one thing that I have. It's a splitter, so I could plug 4 pairs of headphones in the grandiose delusion that I would eventually have people live in a studio with me and have like 4 mics live at once, and we would need 4 sets of headphones.
One of these days.
Yeah, eventually down the road. Hold on, I'm gonna actually post the trailer to Staircase YouTube. We could actually start YouTube, the Staircase trailer. Oh, of course I get a message, a POF message as I'm starting this. Hold on, I'll do the one that's 2 minutes and 39 seconds. No, I'll do the one from Netflix itself. That way we're being very friendly about linking them, tagging them, and all that good stuff. Samson can't join us. I guess he's at work right now. What was that?
That would have been my stuff. I'm actually going to turn Facebook off on my computer so that doesn't happen again.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah.
Why the hell didn't that? Let's delete the comment. I swear, I don't like when stuff doesn't work. There you what? Fuck you. See all. Yeah, whatever. All right. Fine. You want to be that way? Be that way. I did my best. The link is there. People can check out the trailer to the Staircase so they know what we're talking about. All right. And I mean, I guess it was like last minute and it's during the day, so I don't know if anyone's going to actually watch live and join in on the chat, but I'll periodically glance over at it and see if anybody has said anything. But I guess we are ready to roll. So I will count us in. And I don't know, maybe we'll do this almost as like a spin-off of Mindhunters. Like this will be one of our like our side mission. You know, like how Holden and Tench always have to go off to the road and like do the interviews and like break off from the other group. This will be like us doing that. We're out on the road doing Staircase. All right, so we'll go in 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast Under the Stairs, the Hollow9ine Network spinoff from our Mindhunter podcast, where we'll be covering the Netflix documentary, The Staircase. It's actually, I guess, technically it's Netflix because the 3 new episodes that got added, the newest episodes at the end, made it more current. And now Netflix has it as part of its ongoing, growing collection of docu-series is based on actual crimes and actual cold cases and cases from the past. So joining me on a side quest here is Mr. T.W. Brown, author and voice of Doom and Gloom on Tangent City with the Hollow9ine Network. How are you, sir?
Oh, man. Doing good. I actually gearing up for a big night. It's zombie hunting night, so, you know.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That thing looks friggin' awesome, man. You definitely at least take some pictures on your way in and some pictures on your way out and a quick testimonial or something. We'll put together a little what you could have seen if you joined him there. And maybe next time you will, guys. We'll see what happens. So yeah, we're going to be taking a sort of special look at another area of, I guess, crime and punishment, criminal justice, the way the criminal mind works, with the series The Staircase over here. Quick high-level synopsis. The story is covering the Michael Peterson murder trial from, I guess it was, the year 2000 or 2001 that this happened?
I believe 2001 is when it started, yeah.
And, well, that was when the trial started, but there was all this other stuff. So I guess the event itself happened, I think, in 2000, December of 2000. And basically... the allegation is that he murdered his wife, but the story is that he came into the home after smoking his pipe out by the pool, after having drinks with his wife earlier that night, and found her at the bottom of the stairs. And so the logical conclusion was that she fell down the stairs and hit her head and cut herself and wound up bleeding to death. And when he found her, he called 911. And from that moment on, he was a suspect. And this now 13-episode docuseries goes on to cover the entire time leading up to the trial, the highlights of the trial, the post-trial, and the sort of here and now of where everything is. I don't even know where to even begin with this, because I feel like even how I characterize it might have stereotyped or at least kind of framed some of the story a little.
That's what's interesting is even if you watch the trailer, it talks about, even in the trailer, they mentioned that he's related to an earlier case. Now, they called it a case, so that's already, in my opinion, they've already prejudiced the person that's sitting down and checking out the trailer by calling it a case. Of a woman who died under similar circumstances.
Yeah, in Germany, in another country. 18 years prior.
And they talk about how they had a relationship. Okay, they were friends of the family. They lived a couple doors down. He was friends with her husband, and their wives were both friends. I mean, so they were just military families that knew each other and that had a friendship. That was their quote relationship. So already, things are kind of going sort of sideways just in the trailer. But there's a part that for me speaks a lot about how this went bad so quickly. And that's when you get this drive around tour with Peterson, and he is showing you Durham and the problems that he's been writing about for the last several years. And calling out the police for not doing their job, calling out the city for not taking care of things, and talking about neighborhoods that that were started and then abandoned, and all these things that he's bringing up. He was not a quiet man. This was a guy that had a column in the paper that was widely read, besides his fiction, that was basically calling out the city and putting them on notice for not doing their job. calling out the police department for not doing their job. So the cops get a call. You know that they've talked about this in the precinct. This guy's name is not going to be a stranger to them. And when they get a call to go to his house, the detective or the cop, actually, because I don't think he's a detective, I think Holland is just a cop, basically keeps Peterson in a shadow the entire time. And he's of the mindset from the moment he walks in and sees it that Peterson killed that woman.
Well, I mean, now yeah, that's fine because I watched this and I feel like I missed that whole aspect of it where he was such a vocal critic of his community, and that I mean, that alone right there, if we want to start with that aspect of it, I think there's a couple different ways we could approach this, because it's almost like I don't want to take Serial's approach. I don't want to, even pretend that we're going to be to that level of it. Like, I'm not spending months and months doing research and shit, but I'm just saying from watching this and having a slightly more than skeptical mind about what we're presented at different times and what the source of that information is. I think for me, I could watch this from a couple different ways. One being as a documentary filmmaker. I've done films where you had to, take into account the sensibilities of your audience. And so there's definitely some things to be said about the way that this is presented as a series and what that highlights. Because I remember railing against this on Facebook as I was watching it, going, don't ever get accused of a crime in Durham. Like, fuck Durham, North Carolina. Holy shit. And I mean, it goes to some other sort of, I don't know if you want to call them societal norms, but jokes that have been around for a while where, if you're married, basically part of the whole situation you're getting yourself into there is being the automatic first suspect if anything ever happens to your significant other, to your spouse, and that it goes both ways. Yeah. Like, you basically became, like, you said, I do, you put rings on each other's fingers, and now you're also suspect number one if anything ever happens to either one of you. You know what I mean? Even if it's like a totally accidental or clearly no fault type situation, you're still going to be investigated. And in this case in particular, it seemed like my first impression, and we're gonna do this in 4-episode chunks because it's a 13-episode series. That I would say too, this took me a while to watch. I think it took me a whole week to watch all of this, whereas I know some people would binge this whole thing in a weekend. But I did find that there were like nights where if I didn't watch 2 or 3 episodes, I was kind of like, I need to know what happens next. I need to know what happens next. Oh my God. But as we're doing this, we could look at it from the way I was left feeling after the whole thing and how that's kind of highlighted in these first 4 episodes. But it felt like the police found a theory that was just easy and decided all of their efforts were going into making that theory work and making that the theory that the jury would eventually see and just accept without even considering any of the other stuff. And now, to be fair, the documentary is very much sided with the defense. We are seeing a lot of almost everything from the defense side. They do interviews with the prosecution side and with the police, but the majority of the time is spent with the defense in this, with Michael Peterson.
Yeah, and this is a really good case of a good case study of once people make up their mind about something, you can show them, I mean, undeniable proof, and they're not going to take it. They're not going to accept it. It's because they're going to find a way to say that proof itself is wrong.
Right.
There's that happens all the time.
It's actually one of the things everyone's the most scared of with the current presidential situation, that, even if the Mueller investigation proves completely beyond a shadow of a doubt that Russia interfered, the base will just say, well, that's fake. That's the fallacy. That's the conspiracy. And it's like, really, you idiots? Like, okay. And so I kind of feel like there was a certain level of, that was the message behind this documentary as well. Like, in a grander scheme thing, greater picture is like, you really have to let go of that holding your first truth to be so impenetrably cherished that you can't accept the new evidence to the contrary.
And it's easy to sit back and watch it and take a side and then stick to it. Now, I can openly admit I went into this because of just the trailer alone going, this guy totally did it. He
Right.
totally did it. But it didn't take long for it to flip. Now, I have a little experience with the criminal justice system, so I know how some of these things happen, and I've seen it firsthand.
I was going to
So,
say, I think you can comment on it from that perspective a little bit better than probably most people would even have an easy time believing somebody could get through and still be okay. So maybe that could be like your area of expertise with this one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that when I watched it, and I watched how they worked the case on the prosecution side, and the whole thing from start to finish, it just it was like time and time again. I'd sit there and go, really? I mean, the judge. I mean, this guy was, I don't know. He just reminded me of Lance Ito and the fact that he was an absolute waste of flesh on the bench.
Yeah, worthless, right? I mean, to me, a lot of these things that we're seeing as the audience of this documentary, you'd be like, how are you not stopping this freak show while it's happening and saying, all right, everybody in my chambers right now, and just look right at the prosecutor and be like, what the fuck? And now, again, we're going to do the first 4 episodes here. We're basically going to talk about right up to the trial. The trial begins in episode
trial on our next episode, and then I'm really going to get electric.
It's going to be, dude, I can tell you, it made me, one of the things that I have the hardest time with watching stuff like this is, one, that it's definitely a true story. When you're watching movies that discuss these things, everything's a little bit exaggerated. There's a little bit of embellishment, a little bit. And, music, I think a lot of people don't realize the fact of music not being part of real life. There's no soundtrack going on. So in those moments in courtrooms where people are sitting for hours waiting for something to happen, it's in fucking silence. It's in the most uncomfortable, weird quiet there ever was, which I only know from sitting around being in jury duty waiting to see if I'm going to get called up to be a juror or not. And that's just like weird. A lot of this is weird. Even like, I'm really impressed with the defense team and how much work they had to do and how much work they did and how all these experts they have, and how even still that could be derailed by a really, really, what in my mind after watching this, my read on it is corrupt as hell police department and justice system. And but the fact that so much of somebody's fate would be carried in who gives a better performance for a group of 12 strangers who, quite frankly, could be too stupid to understand a lot of this. And that's what I took right away. And that's definitely an unconscious bias on my part, being from the North and them being in North Carolina. But I got to say, for you to see all this stuff that we saw, in this documentary, we don't even see every day of the trial. You know what I mean?
We get small excerpts of like spans, but that was one of the things also that Peterson brings up with his attorney, because they were batting around what this was costing him and talking about it. And he even at one point says, how does somebody that doesn't have my means survive this system? It's not fair. It's not right. And that is in that same section where he talks about and they show some of the articles and some of the headlines that he had written about how messed up the system was. And, he says it very clearly that the system is rigged, that if you don't have any money, you're pretty much at its total mercy. Because this cost him coming up close to around $500,000 on a flat rate. I mean, basically said, here's what we're going to charge you. This is what the case is going to be. And the thing is, I mean, they made 2 trips to Germany, all the things that they did, all the experts they brought in. A public defender is not going to do that.
Well, first of all, a public defender is not going to have the time to dedicate to putting that much effort into your case.
40 to 50 cases he may have at any given moment. So, but it just, this is part of the current problem in the system. Because the other thing is, they talk about people being innocent until proven guilty, but the guilty and the media gets its broadcast hooks into things. And of course, they kept showing clips of Nancy Grace, and
I was gonna say, thank God they brought that fucking monster into this shit.
Oh.
I hate her so goddamn much. And I mean, that's especially in the current climate too, politically as well. You know, we may be on the entertainment side. We're entertainment journalism at the Hollow9ine Network for the most part,
right.
mostly op-ed at that. It's a little hard not to feel the sting when the media is now being so persecuted, and it's really surprising for the 2018 American public to be buying into that at all, when we've enjoyed so many decades of like the free press being amazing, and that also leading to things like, hey, do you guys really not like porn? Because it makes a lot of money every year. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I can't imagine that some of you idiots flying those flags and talking all kinds of shit like a Nazi don't also like porn. That's going to go away too if we start limiting free speech, you fucking retards. So, oh God, should have cut that out. But anyway, see what happens when you get so mad you just use words you shouldn't use. I apologize to anybody I may have offended out there. But like, that's the whole thing. But then you'll see something like this and see where okay, I guess I could kind of see what you're saying, because she literally just makes things up the same way it feels like the state is making things up when building its side of the case in this, you know? And so
that was one of the aspects that I was really entertained by, is you would see the trial footage and the question and answer session, and then you would see how she was breaking it down on her show afterwards. And at one point, the defense attorney's like,
is she watching the same trial?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, it's mind blowing, you know, and that's the slant, you know, that's the slant that gets put on everything now.
But even like you said, look at how you know, like, now you went into it thinking this guy's guilty. I think I went into it having seen the trailer. And one of the lines that stuck out to me was one of the people in the trailer who we eventually learn in the first episode is one of the detectives. And he goes, yeah, Michael Peterson just didn't think people wouldn't believe him if he said she fell down the stairs. That line positioned in the trailer very much makes it sound like, okay, the guy's lying. And then the first episode opens and we're very much in Michael Peterson's house, walking around with Michael Peterson. And he's like showing us where he used to sit and have wine with his wife, and that they would rent movies from Blockbuster and talk for hours at a time. And you're kind of like, oh, so this documentary is from his side? Because they definitely advertise this like, oh, yeah, this guy who's guilty. Now, without spoiling too much, I know we've also already talked about almost exclusively stuff outside of the first 4 episodes after setting up that we would talk about the first 4 episodes. But you can obviously Google this and find out what happened. The trial took place, started in 2001, 2002, and it was a couple of years. I think he went till 2005, and then he
supposedly the longest trial in history, supposedly.
Wow, so longer than OJ. That's amazing.
Yeah, my wife actually Googled it when that comment was made, and to look it up, and then she went off on a Google rabbit hole while I was watching episodes, because all of a sudden she just got pulled into it, and she was looking up this and then looking up that and everything else, and so she already had the whole results by the time we were at like episode 3. She knew everything. Well,
I couldn't wait either. I was like, I gotta know what happens to this guy, because after watching the first 2 episodes, you're like, it is pretty incredible. It almost makes it seem like he shouldn't have called 911. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like what was the right course of action here? If you're the only, like, I mean, because what happens if you're the person who's home? You come home and you find, you know, I didn't even think about this till just now. My grandmother used to live in the house that with my parents, where I actually live now. And she lived the last few years of her life there. They took care of her. They were sort of her caregivers. And there was a Saturday or a Sunday morning where my stepdad came down and knocked on my grandma's bedroom door, and she didn't answer. And when he went in, she was on the floor, and there was a giant puddle of blood because she had fallen. She'd gotten up in the night and fallen and hit her head on a table and was basically just lying there bleeding. Like, now, if she had died, would him have calling 911 made him the first suspect in a possible murder there? You know what I mean? That's what this documentary says. Yes, that would have been the case.
And, you know, I listened to that call, and I actually backed up and listened to it a couple times. And then they do play it later on when you get to the trial. You do get to hear it again.
Yeah.
But even and this was my gut reaction. This was when I was still on the I'm pretty sure he did it. And then I heard this 911 call and I thought, okay, maybe not, because listening to that 911 call, that is not a performance 911 in my opinion. That was, I mean, when she's asking him how many stairs,
right?
You know, and he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
I mean, he's incredulous that that's the question he's getting when he's saying, "Come, bring help, send help. My wife is dying. She's unconscious. She's bleeding. There's blood everywhere. How many stairs did she fall down?" And he's just blown away by that question.
Yeah, you know?
That's not a. To me, listening to that whole call, that was not an act. That was not a performance. This was a guy who was genuinely distraught, I believed. You know, if he's an actor, then writing should have been his second calling, and he should be in Hollywood, because that call is heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
You get to hear that in the early episodes, and
I think it starts. I think that's how first episode starts, is the 911 call, actually. You know, I think
with him at the pool, and then it goes
and it's weird because they play it under footage of I believe it looks like it's the footage from the video camera from the detectives making their first walkthrough of the house.
Right.
And it's as he's saying the address, they come to the front door, and then as he's describing the fall down the stairs, they eventually land on, you see her legs from where she wound up landing at the bottom of the stairs. Now, there's not to be throwing shade or any unpaid for sponsorship, but whatever. That we obviously we're not the only ones who are going to be talking about this show, but there is, I think I was in a group where someone was asking for anybody who believes he was innocent, why, and there are a lot of people who are firmly on the belief side that he is guilty as sin and that there is no way he's innocent. And I was linked over to a show that basically uses the 911 call and almost the 911 call alone, and breaks that down and talks about how that in itself proves that he did this, and that this whole story of her falling down the stairs is a fabrication of the defense team, and that he's absolutely guilty, and that that even the documentary, I think somebody, I can't remember where I saw this, somebody said that even this documentary was made by somebody who was supposedly alleged to have had a personal relationship with Michael Peterson. Now, one of the things that does come up, and this comes up even pre-trial, is that Michael Peterson is bisexual, and that he kept that side of his life very quiet and closed off from not all of his family. I mean, there are some people who kind of like already knew it when it came out in the course of this trial, or in the course of this whole situation. And then there were some that when they learned, you know, there are many kids in this family, we should probably at some point kind of look at the family tree and break down who the family is. That when they learned it, they were like, okay, so. And so I think that's another weird thing to be looking at in 2018 America, because that pretty much should be the response, right? The yes, so. But that was one of the cornerstones of the case that the state built against him. That somehow this led to a motive.
And when we get to the whole admissible start, and we get to the court, like I said, when we get to the trial, this will be a whole different version of me, because I got.
We may not be able to do that one live. Like, I dropped an R bomb already, and I'm going to be apologizing multiple times for it. But we might have to do that one over Skype just in case, because I can tell I would probably get heated on that one.
I mean, it was sitting here watching it with just. I mean, I was incredulous the whole time, but. You know,
and I feel that way sometimes about fictional stuff. You know what I mean? So to be watching it about a real story, like a true story, I'm just like, God.
In episodes, in our first 4, which, you know, what we're trying to dutifully cover, this is where they're also starting to, the defense team is kind of rolling out some of the stuff that they're trying to use to defend him on test audiences. And when Lee's explanations get shown to this Durham, South Carolina test audience.
Oh God, this was
my Lord. I'm sitting
infuriating.
Here going,
because it's full on fucking racism, man. That's some straight up Southern racist bullshit.
I just tuned out because I really couldn't understand what he was saying because of his accent and this and that and the other. And I'm like, oh my God, really?
Kill your fucking selves, you assholes. Kill yourselves.
I'm listening to this. I mean, I was watching it and I'm like, how? I mean, yeah, okay, he speaks in broken English, but his English is still relatively clear.
Yeah, no, he was clearly more educated of the blood experts that were, being tested out on the test audiences that were going to cross section that would represent most likely jurors. It's, part of me, part of me felt like, all right, well, if you're this good of an attorney, shouldn't you have found somebody who at least has like an American assistant for situations like this? I mean, it sucks to have to think about it that way, because that means I'm already operating under the same unconscious bias that these fucking sons of bitches and the test audience were. But that was just infuriating to even hear, because, even as that worked against David Rudolph, who was Michael Peterson's attorney, because he's a New Yorker, which is a veiled.
They thought he was slick and he was a used car salesman.
Yeah,
the jury doesn't like you.
Yeah, that's also a veiled anti-Semitic response as well, for sure.
We can discuss that too, because a scene that has nothing to do with the trial itself, but has to do with when he goes to Germany, and then afterwards he's standing there on the street and they're watching that parade.
Yeah.
And he's in the car talking to his friend, and he goes, "Yeah, I was watching, and there was all these guys in this parade, and I couldn't help but wonder what that parade looked like in 1945."
Oh yeah.
I mean, how many of my friends were, held down during these things, and that that he couldn't. I mean, here he is. He has to go to Germany to do this, and then he sits there and watches this parade, and he's just like, he's dealing with his own heritage and his Jewish ascendancy as he's watching it. I mean, so there was a pointed moment that had nothing to do with the trial, but you had to sit there and take it in, because to him,
the money thing has nothing to do with the trial directly, but it also, if we're talking about conspiracy theories and talking about exposing weaknesses in the system, the money thing that he mentioned there's a whole series of videos on YouTube about how that's by design, how this whole justice is just another form of control by the Illuminati, and it's to help the wealthy and the elite continue to navigate society with less barriers than the rest of us. It's a system designed to keep people who are not wealthy down. And so, there's a lot of things that this exposes or discusses or shows without being directly about that. Like, to me, the first episode when they show the district attorney and the detectives, and they're like, we were considering that maybe she fell down the stairs until we looked at this picture, and this is what her head looked like. And to me, that's just, you don't get that without a weapon. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, okay, I'm sorry, you're a fucking scientist, because if that's your first impression, but then it's coupled with things like there's no skull damage, there was no brain damage, there were no subdural hematomas, there was nothing that would have indicated blunt force trauma, but you just looked at a picture and said, "Oh, blunt force trauma," and
you've obviously never had a head injury before.
And from that moment on, that's their every effort is made to make that be what the case is. It's almost like, so one person gets to just make up what they think is the truth, and that becomes the truth. You know what I mean? Like, how is that how it really works? But and eventually, they show later on that guy became a district judge or a superior court judge of that district or something, the district attorney. So it's like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like, this guy's out here framing people, making people guilty when they're not, using flimsy or non-existent evidence. Like, when they start talking about they don't talk about it in the first 4 episodes of the blow poke, do they? Isn't until the trial.
That comes up as we get into the trial.
But they do say, all right, so they're trying to say it was blunt force trauma, but they have no murder weapon, and they also have no motive. until they discover his computer, which has correspondence with homosexual escort service, and that becomes a focal point for them. But it's almost as if like they just went by the actual old adage, like, oh, if a wife is dead at the bottom of the stairs, her husband pushed her down. You know what I mean? Like that's where it starts. You know, like they don't even need the weapon to be like, oh, there was a murder. You know, I mean, I kind of feel like the fact that they used science on the defense side, you know, and talked about how you have to look at pictures multiple times. You can't just look at them once and make your conclusion. Meanwhile, you had when they talked to it just felt so good old boys when they would talk to the district attorney, because he's the one that the interviewer is talking to, and this other detective sitting next to him keeps jumping, going, yeah, the medical examiner didn't think so either. It's like, dude, fucking you, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you, 5? Are we in a fucking kindergarten classroom here where you're throwing in your little extra 2 cents to make sure the camera sees you? Fucking shut up, you know. But these are cops. These are the detectives that, you know, charged with finding out the truth of what happened.
And this is where we get to in episode 3 is the exhumation. Episode 3 is the exhumation of Ratliff over in Germany. And here's the thing: is when I was watching that episode, I'm like, okay, they're going to dig this woman up in Texas
after almost 20 years.
And then they're going to put her body in a hearse, and they're going to drive her up to North Carolina, an 18-hour drive, to have Deborah Radish, a name that I will be turning into an expletive in our next meeting. So that this woman who basically was the medical examiner that looked at the body and said she was beaten to death, she was murdered, and then gets to do the autopsy on this woman after the German authorities had already concluded that it was not a homicide. And in her report, which is supposed to strictly stick to the scientific facts of what she discovers and give measurements, he labels this a blunt force trauma homicide.
Yeah, homicidal intent. Yeah, it was like
her report.
I mean, alone, the judge should have thrown the whole thing out, right? Like, to me, the judge should have been like, this is out of line. You know what I mean?
Could they not have an autopsy done in Texas? Are Texas MEs not capable? No, they didn't have one that was on their payroll.
Right.
That woman worked for the district attorney, and she gave him the information he wanted in the way he wanted it. And that's why they needed to get that body to her. And that's my honest to God thought.
Oh yeah, I mean, to me that's pretty obvious. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Radish and says, "I'm going to have the body brought to you. I need you to make this tie in." When you look at the pictures that she drew that show the injuries, and then the guy takes a transparency of the actual injuries and puts it on the picture she drew, and they're not even close.
Yeah, from the defense, when the defense is examining her autopsy report,
what she drew versus what is actually in that photograph. But she drew what matched up what they needed.
And the fact that, like, you know, I know, again, you know, people can point to the fact that, all right, this documentary is being done from very early on. You see that it's sort of aligned with the side of the defense. So maybe they're going to take their, make their efforts to spin it to show the defense in the most positive light possible. And so there could be some unconscious bias there. But it really, I feel like they were being very even-handed when they were showing, they're giving the district attorney's side like every opportunity to prove their case, you know, or to kind of share why they feel the way they do about these things. Whenever they're given that opportunity, they just keep going to things like, oh, well, obviously from looking at this picture, or, well, it's, you know, it's my opinion that couldn't be what they're saying couldn't be true from looking at this. And it's like, but that's not enough. You are supposed to have either credentials that make your opinion matter more, or the opinion of a professional who's proven to be an unbiased source. You know what I mean? And so everything seemed so surface level obvious about the way the prosecution was going about this, the district attorney. And I think the scene where they're doing the test audience with the defense's experts only serves to compound that it's like a regional problem. You know what I mean? That it's this region of the country. Maybe just Durham in itself right now is the only one you could really point any kind of finger at after this documentary, but it does make it a very scary prospect to have to be on the defensive side of a legal proceeding of this nature in this country, of a criminal case. It's I am horrified after watching this. Like, I don't want to fucking talk to people anymore. You know, I just want to stay in my house.
In your room, order your online, have them delivered, and just never leave your house again.
And have as many records as possible of where I am, so that if any shit like this goes down, they're like, "Oh, Dave Merds." I mean, no fuckers. Look, I got all this proof of where I was, and I was nowhere near that. I wasn't even
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It couldn't have been me.
I was never even in contact with that person. You can check all of my devices and my social media streams. Like, I don't even know who that is. It's another reason to not, accept random friend requests, by the way. People out there. Not just to not get catfished, but holy shit. You know what I mean? Like, you could be the prey of a predator.
There's one instance after another throughout this entire thing. And maybe I'm wrong, but as I'm watching this, Hardin has the worst male case of resting bitch face that I've ever seen.
Oh my God, dude. He's
got a permascal, and I'm drawing a blank on her name right now, but his assistant, the woman that was prosecuting with him,
she was a monster too.
Put on a ship with Nancy Grace and sent to sea.
But she was one of the people that pissed me off the most, because it was not even using fact or legal. Like, it was like, he's gay. That means he's gay. It's just like, whoa, what? Like, that's your reason. And
it's like a throwback to the ideology that because you were gay meant you had a mental condition. I mean, that's basically the way she was coming at it, is turning his sexual orientation into part of the prosecution.
Yeah.
And then you got that, redneck Sapstick Holland as the cop. And I mean, he reminded me of every inept correctional officer I ever met. And cops and correctional officers don't get along. They hate each other. And so using that is probably the worst slander I could throw at that guy.
Wow.
That guy was a bumpkin. He was a bumpkin. I mean, he had his mind made up the moment he walked in. Now, I would like to go back through Peterson's articles that he wrote about the city and find out if Holland was ever actually mentioned in his ineptness, because this is a guy that has no business wearing a badge.
Yeah. But again, and he was another one that all he would say is, "Oh, she didn't look consistent with what I've seen in my career as a fall." It's like, all right, that's all you're going to give us? That's the only answer you've got? That's all you've got for us? Because you're putting a guy in jail for the rest of his life. You're taking a guy's life away from him. To me, I found it very easy to believe that Michael Peterson didn't do this. I found it very easy to believe that he was sincere in the 911 call. The only thing I didn't like about the 911 call that made me feel a little bit like, all right, what's up with that, is how he kept saying, okay. Be like, it's like 1822 Crestwood, okay? Like, oh, okay? Like, he was mad at the 911 operator, which didn't play well. No, I mean, I'm not saying that that's any proof that he's lying. I'm just saying that doesn't play well.
Take that up is, if I'm the one that's making that call because my wife has fallen down the stairs, which, by the way, I want to go on record so that this can be brought up later and you can maybe bring this up and throw it at a court someday. I already know that I will die falling down my staircase because it's almost straight up and down. And I've got 2 dogs that are over 130 pounds on, that go rushing down beside me all the time. I've had my legs taken out so many times. When I hit my 60s or 70s, one of these days the dog's gonna take my and I'm done. That's it. Yeah. Who's cooked? I'm going down the stairs and it's game over. So,
well, no, dude, you gotta install a camera there now. That's the whole thing. You gotta install a security camera.
My wife probably didn't push me down the stairs. I'm gonna say probably, just because it'll be fun, and that way, there'll maybe be a Netflix drama that she'll get to.
That's what I'm saying. Don't do this to your family, man. Put a fucking security camera there. Let that shit end with footage right there. Let that be like, yep, see, because wow. See, the dog agrees. The dog said, yeah, security camera, get me off the hook. Because that's the whole thing too, is I've fallen downstairs and gotten fucking hurt like a motherfucker from it. Like, imagine the idea that you've drank a bottle and a half of wine, or a bottle each, basically, if they both were sharing 2 bottles of wine. And she took a Valium, and it's dark, and she's wearing flip-flops. I mean, like, there's a million reasons she could have fallen down the stairs, hit her head a bunch of times. And then one of the things that I actually was pissed that they show us in the beginning and then don't wind up ever using in court, or if they do, we didn't see it, is that they did a test with a recording of someone screaming for help, played on a stereo system with the volume cranked from the bottom of those stairs, and then went out with microphones to where he was standing or he was sitting out by the pool. And you can't hear that. You cannot hear the person screaming for help from where he was. No. So, you know, their argument that, like, oh, the blood was so dry by the time the emergency people got there that she must have been there for hours. It's like, he could have been out by the pool for 2 hours, smoking a pipe, like listening to nature. I mean, this is this is one of the oldest things that has always freaked me out about the way this stuff works. You remember an old movie from the 80s called Throw Mama from the Train?
Oh, yeah.
With Billy Crystal and Danny DeVito. And Billy Crystal's wife at one point in the movie is suspected murdered, or is missing and presumed dead, and he's immediately the suspect. And the night that this happened to her, that she went missing, just so happens to be the night he was at the beach, passed out drunk, because he couldn't think of a story to write for his novel that was coming due. And, you know, he wakes up the next morning and gets back and finds out that she's missing, and he has no alibi. You know what I mean? But, like, legitimately, you what? So, like, being home alone reading a book, even if that's true, is not an alibi. You know, like passing out drunk at the beach, even if it's true, if it's what happened, it's not an alibi, unless you've got some kind of device recording you to prove the date and time, and that's where you are. But that means we got to submit to living in a police state. It's really fucking crazy when you start to try to break it down and look at it like this.
So let's real quick touch on the idea of the coincidence of 2 women found at the bottom of the stairs, because that's what I want to, and that's what I am going to call it, is a coincidence.
That's episode 3. We're still within 1 through 4 right now.
Yes, here's the thing. And I'm going to use a recent sporting event to tie these together. Have you ever been, and I'm going to ask you, have you ever been to a major league or minor league or any baseball game?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, how many foul balls have you caught that you were able to keep as a souvenir and come home with?
I've never been close enough to be like, I've never had good enough seats for that, but I did at the last game I went to see a kid get hit in the face with a foul ball, like to the point where they had to take him out to an ambulance.
I've had prime seats for Mariner games where I, you know, if there would have been one, I would have been able to snag it if one would have come my way. But in all the games that I've gone to, never. Not once. I am at 0 on my foul ball register. Okay. Right. And there's only hit per game, but I never was lucky enough to get one. Okay. Yet recently, within the last couple of weeks, a guy on back-to-back pitches catches the foul ball from his seat. Back-to-back pitches. Okay. So not only does he get one, but he gets another. The odds of that happening, next to none. All right. But anything can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, coincidences are just exactly that. They are coincidental. And the thing is this woman that died in Germany, Ratliff, she had been complaining about headaches when she was found at the bottom of the stairs. And did you, like me, get a mixed version of the accounts where there was lots of blood, no blood, lots of blood, no blood?
It definitely felt like they were trying to amp up the blood on the prosecution side. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they were trying to make it more similar than it was. The only similarity is that Michael Peterson was in the vicinity of it happening.
Yeah, 2 houses down. Okay. Yeah. So, but coincidences do happen. So the job of the prosecution is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And I just do not think, with what we saw, what we heard, that can be considered. But he is in Durham. He is wealthy. He is bisexual.
Yep.
It's 3 strikes and he was out.
It's very similar, and even the way that this eventually plays out, it would be impossible for us to not talk about the parallels to the West Memphis Three. But it's very much, if you're an outcast in the society you're in, and that's the pool from which your jury is going to be selected, you're screwed. You really have a problem.
Let's real quick just touch on what year was the O.J. Simpson trial?
Was that 94? And hold on a second.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. So 94.
It was
okay,
definitely in the 90s. Yeah.
So like we're in a range where people are still talking about if you've got enough money, you can get away with murder. We're still in that range. You know,
wow.
This is just another chance.
95.
Yeah, so to say, yeah, your money is not going to save you. We're gonna find you guilty, maybe because of your money. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that's rich should get off, but I'm saying that when you look at the facts and you look at, and you have to sit there and look at it and go, is there anything here that causes me to doubt at all? And when we talk later about Lee's testimony and about the blood spatter and the smearing and the what was that, the ring and everything else like that, where he really dissects the blood stains and the blood that was there and then wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know, when we get to
the glitches in the photos and shit too.
You know,
there's so much.
Yeah, or flashbacks. My phrase flashback is going to be real important in our next episode.
Oh my god! So, I mean, you know what? It feels like a movie. That's the other thing. Some of this shit is.
Yeah, we're giving teasers to the next episode. You need to catch the next one, because when we get to the next episode, when you watch episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8, if you're not angry.
Oh yeah,
I'd like to know why, and please email us, comment, do whatever you need to do, but tell me why that didn't make you angry. When they talk to his daughters, who were Ratliff's actual daughters. So let's talk about genealogy.
Yeah, we should talk about the family tree. Yeah.
He's got her daughter, he's got his sons, and they've got 2 girls that were Ratliff's daughters.
So now his sons are with Catherine, though, right? Or what is his wife's name that he allegedly murdered? Kathleen. No,
they didn't have children together.
So his 2 sons are from a previous marriage.
Yeah, they were the lady that, remember when they go over to Germany and see his wife, and I'm drawing a blank.
Right. They had like an amicable divorce, right?
Yeah.
So they stayed friends. So yeah.
So he's got two boys from her that are in their mid to late 20s. She's got she's got a girl.
She's got the one daughter from her previous marriage.
Yeah, and then they've got the 2 Ratliff girls who basically
they adopt
2 and a few months old. So Peterson is basically their dad.
Now that's because Kathleen and their mom Ratliff were very good friends, and he was friends with their father.
Yeah.
And didn't their father die?
Yeah, their father died in Granada.
And then now the thing is that Mary Ratliff also had a medically recorded condition, and what initially the story is that she had a brain aneurysm at the top of the stairs and wound up falling down the stairs as a result. And they have medical records that for the weeks leading up to that, she'd been complaining about headaches and dizzy spells. So it's like, for them to then fit this narrative 20 years later with a new autopsy on an exhumed body is a little infuriating in and of itself. It's like something you would see in an X-Files episode.
It had to be transported to North Carolina to be looked at by the same person who looked at Kathleen Peterson's body.
And it's like this is the kind of shit that would happen in an episode of X-Files where Mulder is trying to prove that the local authorities are biased and are obstructing the investigation.
Right.
Oh, do you need to get out? Hold on a second. I need to let a dog out of the room.
All right, you take a break. We'll be right back.
Stand by.
I'll do the same thing. I got to take mine to the door, too. Welcome to our house. Oh. Okay. I'm back. I'm back before Dave. See, now would be a really good time to type in a question if you're watching this.
Oh man, my nephews are here. I did not know that was happening today. Shit like that always goes down.
So, I think we were talking about the genealogy of the Peterson.
Yeah. So we were talking about also how they adopted the two daughters of Ratliff right after
Ratliff's
Ratliff
two
died.
daughters, which, interestingly enough, even after the Ratliff exhumation, they stand behind Michael Peterson.
Well, that's the thing that is one of the hardest things about this situation is it really starts to erode away your ideas of what it means to be able to, live your own life and actually have your own family and have things that are true to you, whether other people understand them or not. This especially, I guess, with everybody's it's amazing how this story, even though it's from 2000, highlights all these sort of current new trending arguments in the social sphere. You know, the idea of everybody's identities and transit, the transsexual situation, and how all of these things, you know, it's. I'm sorry.
You mean bisexual?
I mean, well, in this it's bisexual, but nowadays the
right, yeah, I see what you're
trans. But this starts to kind of shed a light on how someone will use that to challenge your truth based on the societal norms. You know, now I know that this is the same exact argument conservatives and liberals are making against each other, but I'm just saying from a more humanitarian perspective.
Yeah.
As soon as he became known to be bisexual, it started to become the lens through which a lot of things are looked at. Yeah. Not so much on the defense side, you know, and especially too, he fully embraces and admits to this. It's not something that he's hiding now that it's out.
Exactly.
And I don't think it was something he was necessarily hiding from his family per se. You know, according to him, his wife knew about it, and that is not something that's unique in.
Now, I have a little angle on this as well. I mean, one of the things that I do for a living is I narrate audiobooks. One of the genres I narrate are male romances. Now, I have zero interest in that angle. I have zero interest in that lifestyle. I'm really happily heterosexually married to my wife and have no curiosity whatsoever about that world. However, I figured when I was doing this that I would have all these guys coming out of the woodwork that would be listeners, that would, you know, comment or, you know, become followers or fans or whatever. My fan base is women.
Nice. That's funny.
Crazy. Okay. But, you know, it's the more things change, the more they stay the same. But it's preconceived notion. And until something gets thrown up in your face to change it, that's where you're going to live. You know,
yeah.
I mean, I had an idea going into this line of work, what the outcome was going to be, and it was completely wrong. It was completely wrong. Now, I have male fans as well, but they're fans. I mean, nobody mails me their boxer briefs or anything else like that. I don't get anything weird going on. I mean,
see, now, if we were in a courtroom in Durham right now, someone would be saying the fact that he's even bringing that up means that it's happening. Nancy Grace would be like, why would you even bring that up if it's not something that you've actually experienced? That means that he's lying. And if he's lying about that, what else is he lying about? Like that is the feedback loop that becomes louder than truth. You know what I mean? And that is one of the scariest things, not only about this case, but seemingly about human nature, because I grew up the last couple decades believing that the times we were living in were beyond that, you know, and that we were much more adherent to universal truths and proof and evidence and scientific fact. And to see that we've come back to a time where that's being questioned, it's less surprising then that this case wound up going the way it did, because I'm sure like the way we had a little bit of an idea that, okay, this guy did it from the second it started, they were never open. You know, there were minds that would just never be open to the idea that first preconceived notion could have been made on not enough information, could have been wrong, should be admitted to if it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there's also a certain level of human pride that comes into play too. And I think for the district attorney as well, it's like, you know, eventually in the documentary, they start saying it's just about winning. They just wanted to win. And it wasn't until you brought it up in this recording that I really started to see that connection between, for them, the win isn't even about justice for this dead person. It's, oh shit, we've got an ironclad way of making this guy pay for all the criticism he's levied at us all this time. You know,
in the arc that we're covering, we get the trial. It's your first exposure to Orlando, the judge. Orlando, what's his name?
Asshole.
They go up before him because they have the Ratliff exhumation. They have Deborah Radish's autopsy with things that say that her injuries are those of a homicidal attack.
Yeah.
Not maybe. No, she says they are those of a homicidal attack in her coroner's report, which is supposed to strictly be science and fact-based. Yeah. Okay, so now we can really talk about the fact that this had to be brought to North Carolina to be done. Okay, that's problem number one. Then they go to the judge, and I thought that the defense made a very clear-cut case for why this should not have been admissible. And yet, Orlando, and it gets talked about afterwards. I mean, Peterson's attorney, when they go to Peterson's house, he's like, what is he lobbying for? Is he up for an election?
Right. Yeah. It immediately became all these people have some other motive in mind. This trial is now no longer, and that again, everything about this is a further indictment from a grand scheme perspective of the justice system. You know what I mean? That it's like you've got a person whose life is in the balance here, and it really doesn't even matter if they're innocent or guilty. It's all the parties at play. The Game of Thrones that's happening around them with all the different characters is really what's going to be. And you might not even unless you're one of the two top people about which that game is being played, you might not even know that game is happening. You're just the patsy who's going to wind up spending his life in jail. You know what I mean? Like, it's insane.
They bring up the point that on how much coverage is going to be allowed in the courtroom and everything, and how that took weeks and weeks and weeks to have a determination made. And yet Judge Orlando Hudson, in one fell swoop of this hearing, says, yeah, we're going to admit it.
Yeah.
We're going to admit this evidence. And this was also the episode where they show they take Deborah Radish's images and her report, and they bring in their guy, and he's showing you, look, these injuries don't match up to what she's got here. What the jury is going to see for the injuries that are done to this, that Ratliff suffered, that they don't even match up to what's in the pictures. It's fiction, and basically Hudson allowed a fictional document to be admitted as evidence.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, he is one of the people who gets interviewed at the very end of the documentary and even says, yeah, looking back on it, maybe some of that stuff shouldn't have been admitted, or it should have been understood that would prejudice a jury. It's like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Like 20 years later, you're like, oh yeah, I might have fucked up with that one. It's like, how dare you? First of all, how dare you?
It's a judicial my bad.
Yeah. And where the fuck, and I think that's one of the greatest tragedies of our current existence right now is we're finding that, the guys in charge are corrupt as shit, and there's no one to do anything about that. We're supposedly the ones who were supposed to do something about that. We're the ones who are supposed to like rise up and fucking do a revolution. But like Michael Peterson said, it cost him $850,000 just to get bailed out. You know what I mean? Like they were, and I think they talk about it later. I don't know if they talk about it in the first 4 episodes, but how they had to work just to try to keep him out of jail the night that he was arrested, and it didn't work. Like he wound up still in jail. And there are definitely times where, David Rudolph, I think one of the things is in this documentary, he looks like a superhero to me. You know what I mean? The level to which he took things and the amount of work and the detail that he goes to, I was like, I really wish I would have a David Rudolph on my side if I was ever in a situation like this. But one of the hardest things about it is that, he takes the loss on it, when they do eventually convict Michael Peterson. And that's definitely in the next section. That'll either be episode 2 or 3. Because it takes an emotional toll on him too. He's really like emotionally involved in this because I think from his perspective, it's the idea of the same things that we're being appalled by. It's like, wait a minute, what? They literally just made something up and the judge is letting it in. Like, I've never played on a battlefield this tilted against us before. Like, I'm sorry, man. I'm fighting uphill every minute of the day.
Let's tie that into the parade that he witnesses when he's over in Germany and the comments he makes on the phone call when he gets home about, if I never see Germany again, it'll be too soon.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about a professional man from the Jewish community that had to go to Germany and do all this stuff. But he saw Peterson's sexuality become the cornerstone of the prosecution's reason for why he would be guilty.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing.
That is a prejudice that he can understand through culture.
Yeah.
You know, you can understand that through culture. And that, I think, is why this takes such a toll on him, because he wanted to do something. And no, he wasn't doing anything for the Rainbow Flag Coalition or anything else like that. He was doing it because it was, you know, it was his job and he was a professional. But I think the reason this case meant so much to him and why it did take such a toll is because there was so much that had nothing to do with the case that was being used as damning, quote, evidence.
And what pisses me off is that the jury didn't see that. You know, like I often wonder if I was a juror on a case like this, I would just deadlock. You know what I mean? I'd be like, fuck you guys. I'm not going to just go along with you because you guys don't want to listen to scientific evidence and you want to be fucking racist against an Asian guy because you don't like the way he speaks English. Fuck all of you. You know what I mean? Like I would be pretty furious.
Where was Peterson's 12th Angry Man? You know, that's
yeah. Where was his Jack Lemmon to turn the other 11 back to voices of reason? Denise Brown retracted her comment. We had one comment almost on the live feed here from our one.
She'll type it in a minute.
Our one viewer. Thank you for putting up with our antics for this whole thing. And yeah, it's. I mean, this is a good one. Not only because of the drama. I mean, it pulls you in. Like we could talk about it as a TV show for a few minutes, but it's. I feel I don't know how actually I feel about, you know, watching these shows. This one, Evil Genius, I don't know how many more of these I have in me after this one, because I think even as a viewer, it took a bit of an emotional toll on me. And thinking about it afterwards, you know what I mean? You could almost go through like a sympathetic trauma around it, thinking about what this would be like being any one of these people. You know, like there were times I was watching it thinking, you know, looking at David Rudolph going, you know, this is a true professional. This is somebody who really understands what work ethic is and what it means to really have passion behind what you do. Because, I mean, you got to imagine during the years that this was happening, he wasn't sleeping very much, you know, and he's coordinating this whole team of all these other experts and private detectives and legal analysts. You know, I mean, it was.
Every time he walked outside, he was hit by a barrage of cameras, and then he'd have to go home and watch everything he'd done get dissected and completely turned into a different direction by people like Nancy Grace. I mean,
yeah,
and just to comment on, because I want to take something up about as far as media. I mean, what we're doing is entertainment. We're not a news show. We're not broadcasting, and we will take sides on things openly. This isn't journalism. What we do, what we're doing is commentary, and we're talking about the episode and how it made us feel, and we're expressing that and giving people who've either watched the show something to nod along with, or maybe even something to disagree with. But the problem that I feel has really become the forefront of what is driving this is the fact that you can't turn on television without being barraged by POV from the people that are supposed to be giving you, you know, to quote an old detective show, just the facts.
Right.
You know? I took journalism in high school back in the 80s. Okay. I had a teacher who would redline my article and say, that's opinion, that's opinion, that's opinion, cut those out, submit the article. You know, you're not supposed to, as a journalist, give an opinion. You're supposed to report facts. And watching this, from seeing what was happening in the courtroom firsthand from what they were told, you were seeing them talk about something completely different than what actually took place.
Yeah.
And making assumptions and broadcasting those assumptions as news. And that's what we get 24/7 now on all these news networks. I don't care if you like CNN. I don't care if you like Fox. I don't care if you're liberal. I don't care if you're conservative. I really just don't care. Everybody is wrong right now.
Yeah.
Everybody is wrong.
Oh, and I think that this documentary is a great example of, you won't even believe that until it's you. Until you're the one that's under the microscope and having the stories about you distorted and twisted, you know, having a prosecutor decide that you're family friend who's been dead for 20 years needs to be exhumed, and that your adopted daughters are going to have to live through their mom being dug up and brought into court. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot that I think everybody still, no matter how many of these stories are ever told or ever captured or ever presented in film or TV or documentaries or whatever, like you still won't get that you think it's a certain way until you're the one that's being constantly questioned and second guessed by people who aren't even involved, by people who have no connection to it whatsoever, and are Monday morning quarterbacking from an armchair using a BuzzFeed headline, as their justification to smear you or slander
They still
you.
misquote. Yeah. I mean, and you were talking about Rudolph and his professionalism. The scene that I feel in these first 4 episodes that displays it the most is the scene when he's in the courtroom practicing his opening statements with the guy that's supposed to be doing the slide presentation.
Oh, yeah.
That to me showed how deeply invested in this he was, and his degree of, he wanted nothing that was going to distract the jury from what he was saying, and the things had to go this way, this way, this way, this way. And while he's in there doing his rehearsal, even then, oh yeah, we might have to have you evacuate the building. There might be a fire, and they might be having to look for one.
Yeah, again, some good old boy back hills hillbilly bullshit. Like, somebody pulled the fucking fire alarm to screw him over. You know what I mean? Like,
are you serious? But the interaction he has, I mean, I felt sorry for the guy that was running the.
Dude, I've seen that shit go down, and I've been in situations where somebody's like, we're gonna stay here all goddamn night if we have to get this fucking thing right, dude. I don't give a fuck. It's 9:30. You've already missed 3 dinners. Yeah, I hear you. Like, let's fucking get this right so we could go home. And so I had sympathy for everybody in that scene.
And he's like, well, I know what he did wrong. Yeah, but that's just it. It's what you did wrong, and I told you what I wanted, and you didn't listen. I mean, so it's just, you've got the I know version of the guy in the background, where he's kind of just, oh, I know what to do, blah 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 blah, and he's just gonna throw it together, and the dude's like, no, I mean, and he completely loses his shit in that courtroom.
Yeah,
he gives that guy a new one, and.
Like, I almost feel like he should have moved to have the case moved to a different jurisdiction because of the way that the everything was being tainted. Like almost there's that movie A Time to Kill where Matthew McConaughey is considering moving to have the trial heard in a different locale because he was afraid of being able to get an unbiased jury. and the judge, like, before the whole thing starts, the judge says, now, just in case you were thinking about trying that, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss it before you even say anything. And he's like, are you sure? Because that alone could be a mistrial right there. How do you know we were even thinking about doing that? You know what I mean? Like, by you admitting that means that there's a potential we wouldn't be able to get an unbiased jury. You know what I mean? It's like little shit like that. That they weren't even that sophisticated. They were just like, just pull the fire alarm. Fuck this guy. He's not going to be able to rehearse. You know what I mean? Like, what the? And I think isn't there a bomb scare during one of the later trials, like during the retrial or something? There's a bomb threat called in at one time. It's just like, South, if you want to be taken seriously, you bitches are really going to have to grow up one of these days. All right. Like, seriously, shut the fuck up with your whiny crap. Like, oh, we're just going to pull the fire alarm so he can't rehearse. Like, Durham, North Carolina. Really?
Yeah.
Durham, North Carolina.
It's a degree of myopathy that you don't think exists. However, and this will piss people off because I'm going to sort of jump on your coattails with this one, but I lived in the Deep South when I was in the military. I was in Charleston, South Carolina while I was in the military. Okay. And I had a friend that I hung around with that was a, smooth dressing, 6 foot plus black man from Detroit named Delbert. And, he said, I got 2 rules when we go out to drink. 1, somebody has to stay sober to make sure we can drive home safe. And 2, if we walk in the bar and hear yeehaw, we leave. The next thing coming out of their mouths, and it's just that was the thing is you'd go into a place And, you know, he and I being friends and everything, and you would see heads turn and Delbert would go, yeah, this is not the bar for us, you know?
Yeah. It
And
sucks.
it was
Sucks.
there, and it's
Yeah.
still there. You know, I
Because
live.
those people have kids that they instill with that shit, and then those kids have kids that they instill with that shit. You know, I mean, like Oprah got famous, well, not got famous, but was famously quoted not too long ago saying that the only way racism is going to end is when the old people die. And it's like, no, it's too fucking late, man. It's just like the same indoctrination we talk about in other parts of the world. You know, that shit is ingrained, and it's going to take somebody who that shit was ingrained into having the realization on their own that would maybe stop the cycle for that person and their line of their kids if they have them. Yeah. It's not going to be like one person wakes up and then all the 10 people standing around them wake up to it also. And I don't know what it's going to take, but
one family at a time is how it can or will happen.
It's not scary because that shit is it's been, I mean, that's again, it goes into a lot of things. It's the same way that suddenly people are sort of not too upset about Nazis anymore. And it's like, hey, dicks, when you would go see Indiana Jones, were you on the side that was rooting for him to win or for the Nazis to win? Like, does that really mean that half that theater was sitting there going, like, when are the Nazis ever going to win one of these? Like, guys, they're not supposed to, because they're losers, because they're assholes and evil pieces of shit. Like, come on.
Schindler's List is not a comedy.
Exactly, dickbags. Exactly. That, yeah. And the fact that we have to say that, the fact that we know that there are people who think it is ridiculous. Yeah. Like, that's just, how do you justify that? How do you justify that? But when, I'm amazed that the Durham court system allowed this documentary to be made. Not that they would really be able to do anything about it, freedom of speech wise, but I mean, it's a pretty bad indictment of them. You know what I mean? I don't see how anybody watches this and goes, yo, Durham needs a thorough cleaning out. So we need to go down there and
away from it, wondering how Holland and Hardin have jobs.
Yeah, and that still, I mean, that they, you know,
I can tell you how they have jobs, because they make this all look to the public good. Like, we just took another bad guy off the streets. We saved you. Now, I want to contrast that with what I'm learning about as I've studied up for our other broadcast, the Mindhunter dissection and the BTK thing that keeps coming up throughout, is I'm listening to a full audio book about that investigation, and the officers that ran it towards the end, Landwehr in particular, gets credit, because when they find him, they don't just rush in and grab him. He says, and he actually calls the detectives back from his house. They're going to go and kick in his door and grab him, and he says, nope, we're going to do this right. You know, that is the contrast of what you see with this Peterson thing. I mean, and this is, I mean, BTK is much worse than, even if Peterson was guilty of what he did, BTK is obviously 100 times worse than Peterson in any aspect. But they were so quick to rush to judgment, and they were dogs with a bone. They weren't going to let it go. Once they had it, they weren't going to let it go. And that was, to me, the bottom line. And when we get to episode 4, the trial begins, and the night before the trial, Peterson says what I think is the ultimate truth of the entire series, is this is no longer about Kathleen.
Yeah.
The DA has to win this at any cost, and he's willing to do whatever it takes, and the truth no longer has any meaning as long as he can get his win.
And to be honest, the last line of defense against that is supposed to be the jury of your peers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were not. I venture to guess that that's not the case almost ever. You know what I mean? I just don't. I don't trust that jury. I don't trust these 12 strangers to not be, I mean, especially in this one, you know, when you see the information that's being presented, and for them to not have the full faculties to be able to see how obvious and on the surface the district attorney's sort of manipulation and fabrication is happening, is frightening as hell to me. That's horrifying. You know what I mean? Because they could take 12 nitwits and throw them in a box, and you can't tell me that there wasn't unconscious bias still for the against the sort of fact that one of the investigators was Asian, and that they were just they're pulling the same sort of logic you see in some of these evangelicals who are asked about why they still continue to support the president when they're like, well, he's the president. Who are you supposed to believe, a porn star or the president? It's like, but the president's a label. He wasn't born president. Like, he's not a king. He's not an enlightened despot, you fucking moron. Like, what are you talking about? But I think that mentality is at play here. Who we're going to listen to? We're going to listen to the police. It's like, what? Then why do you believe in court at all if that's how that works? You know what I mean? Like, the whole idea is they're supposed to present evidence and then you decide. If you're just automatically believing the police from the beginning because of the police, well, fuck you, man. You clearly don't get how this works. That's, I think, the biggest thing is nowadays, and shows like this reinforce it. It's as if no one ever really had the real view in mind of how America was supposed to work according to the Constitution. Everybody had their own twisted version of it where they were the good guy always, and whatever they thought should happen. And it's like, no, fucker. And when you find out that you've been thinking about it wrong, you're supposed to change your ways. You're not supposed to change facts or pretend facts don't matter. And this show is like, it shows that this was happening all the way back in 2000, and it's probably been going on since before then. You know what I mean?
Still going on today. I mean, you know, and this is, you know, it's an indictment against the system that is supposed to protect society. It is proof positive, I believe, that the reasonable doubt clause should just be turned into a punchline because it's a joke. I mean, it's not a reasonable doubt anymore. It's which side the media is going to take is going to determine the outcome of this trial.
Because,
that's it. You know, I mean, when he gives when the opening remarks go and you get after Hardin's done and Rudolph gets up there, he brings up a couple of points that it should have just been the end of the trial right there. For one, you know, he talks about, okay, let's say he had a weapon. Why is there no blood anywhere up on the walls, up on the ceiling, anything else like that? Why is there no blood anywhere else in the house?
Right.
You know,
where's the weapon? There was no weapon.
Let's bring this up close. This is a cut I took on my finger. Okay, this little teeny cut. We are still finding blood in my house. Okay.
Yeah.
Still, and we're talking a week later. There was no other blood in Peterson's house that night, anywhere but at the scene where she fell and died, where Kathleen's body was, in that area. Michael Peterson could not have gone anywhere else in the house. He couldn't have changed clothes. None of that. He couldn't have gotten up and scrubbed down the ceiling. None of that. Bottom line, blood goes everywhere, and it is really hard to get it all tracked down. You're going to miss a drop. We went after and followed my path to clean up after I hurt myself, and still there are, this morning, I walked by a section on the wall and went, oh, damn, there's more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We're talking, you know, over a week later, not to mention within an hour or two or even several, you know? So it's just, there's just too much wrong with this whole system. And I think that if you watch this, pick a side, don't pick a side, I really don't care. But if you watch this from a neutral aspect and just listen to the facts as they're put out, what direction do you go?
Yeah.
I mean, and people that maybe are apparently still on this Peterson's guilty bandwagon, were they at the trial? Do they have any knowledge other than, you know, I mean, because if you don't hate Kathleen's sisters by the time,
oh my God,
if you don't hate them by the time you're an episode into meeting them, you know, and I can understand if you lost a sibling and the spouse is accused of murdering your sister or your brother. Yeah, you're gonna be angry. But they take it to a whole new level.
Well, they were angry, but like they at the same time at first were very much on the same bandwagon as the defense. They're like, oh, there's no way Michael and Kathleen were in love with each other. This is the ideal fairy tale storybook marriage. And that's the other thing, is that the prosecution, which I felt was really sort of horrifying was that they used the bisexuality to say, so this wasn't a perfect marriage. This wasn't a fairy tale. They weren't happy. It's like, and it's again, it shines a light on this whole, just because you don't believe that that's possible does not mean that you were part of that relationship and that you knew how it worked. And their family is the ones who were close to that relationship, and for them to all be able to say, yeah, they were totally in love with each other, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and that gets just immediately dismissed because, well, he was bisexual. It's like, yeah, you sound like a fucking idiot, to be honest with me. If that's the conclusion you draw from that, like, that's fucking ridiculous. That's absolutely insane. That and the fact that they eventually kind of use the words common sense as a sort of legal precedent. Like, well, that's just common sense. That if somebody's bisexual and seeking sexual encounters outside the relationship, that's not a happy marriage. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you know how many polyamorous couples there are? Like, anyone who's single right now, who's out of the old school, anyone who grew up in like the anywhere from the late 70s through the early to mid 90s, I'm telling you, man, the landscape is horrifyingly different. Not horrifying, that's probably a negative interpretation, but
no, I think you're pretty right. I think it would be to them. It would be to me, because that's my range.
Shocking is probably a more appropriate. Surprising. I mean, like you see on all these Tinder things, it's like ethically non-monogamous, polyamorous couple looking for guy or girl. You're just going, are you fucking joking? Like, I just want to find a chick. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to find a girlfriend. I just want to find like one person to deal with. I don't need to be like jumping into a couple. I don't need to be jumping into somebody else's already complex situation. Like, it's like I break off an engagement and 5 years later, it's like, this is what I'm fucking left with. Everyone's even got kids or they're ethically non-fucking monogamous. And then we wonder why STDs are like on the fucking rise. Like, guys, I get it. I know the porn industry exists and it proof that ethical non-monogamous can work, but for fuck's sake, are we all following rules out there? Trust me. Trust me. We're with what we're seeing in this series about how the justice system isn't following the rules. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other people out there being a little what you'd like to call liberal with how they interpret the best ways to fucking follow courses of action. So I'm just saying, it's a different world. So to be watching a prosecutor go, he was gonna meet up with somebody and have anal sex, like, okay, so that equals he murdered his wife? Like, what the fucking fuck sense does that make? And you're employed by the state. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. All you sick motherfuckers, you draconian sons of bitches who believe this shit. Go fuck yourselves.
And on that note,
yeah, it's gonna be rant. It's a big rant podcast.
Yeah, I'll be taking on the role of Dave the Clone in our next series, because we get to the full blown court side of this
fiasco, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, and then this is, and like I said, I'm going to turn Deborah Radish's name into an expletive by the time it's over with. So,
well, the same thing Harden too. Like, it's all, it's tough to stomach because it's not, oh man, they really wrote the villain on this show well. No, this is real. This happened to somebody. This is how this shit goes down. And this is just one, that's the other thing. Put this in your mind. This is just one trial. Like, that court had other rooms with trials going on that day. You know what I mean? This is one of several happening constantly. This is where a lot of our money gets tied up. A lot of taxpayer dollars.
Every major city and every state has at least one of these going on. So keep that in mind when you're watching this, and, pay close attention to what you're seeing in the background. Pay attention to the jurors and the expressions you see on their faces. Pay attention to Peterson's family sitting behind them as they're being shredded by what is being said.
Yeah.
And maybe think, when you think it can't happen here, realize that they all probably thought that exact same thing just on, Thanksgiving of that same year. I mean, it is happening. And, a lot of people just look at this as, well, this is just because it's a wealthy person. Well, yeah, that means it got drawn out longer.
Yeah. He was able to afford to go through all this.
Yeah.
The rest of us, like you, me, all the rest of us, it's like, all right, fuck, I guess I'm done. You know what I mean?
One of they're serving in the big house.
Yeah, like Jesus, this sucks. I guess I better learn ninjutsu like today. I'm gonna go join Cobra Kai real quick before I disappear. Because holy fuck. I mean, it's a horrifying thing, this whole thing. It's very scary. But I think it's obviously it causes enough of a response that we can kind of jump on the line here and talk about it and really dive deep. I am interested. I wanted to maybe wait until after we did our discussions on it to really check out these other shows. I am very interested to see how this one show basically just uses the phone call. It's the 911 call is enough for them to call guilty on this guy. And I'm like, really, I'm a little nervous about it because I'm afraid of what I'm going to hear, but I'm intrigued to hear how somebody could find enough evidence in that.
Shoot me the link.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll even post it in the show notes here just to kind of be fair about everything. But it's it's a hell of a world we got here. It's a hell of a world with a lot of systems and routines, and I think one of the harder things about growing up lately has been realizing that things we thought were true or took to be sort of staples of our reality are maybe not as true or real as we thought they were. And you're
talking to somebody who grew up watching Dragnet and Adam 12 and all these shows where that whole side of the world, the whole law enforcement community was held in such high esteem because they were all such good guys.
Oh yeah.
Oh, dude. Guys.
I mean, I'm talking to this guy named Ken Urell. He was one of the subjects of the documentary The 7-5. He's got a book out now called Betrayal in Blue, and it's all about his experiences as a cop in the 75th precinct in Brooklyn. But there are things he talks about in this book about how even from the moment you become like the low-level rookie cop, you start to see things about how the system is really, the guys who kick money up to the cops above them are the ones who get promoted. And when they say kick up money, that's money that you're taking off of drug dealers and criminals on the street. So already there's a culture of you're already not following the rules from day one. You know what I mean? And all of us who are not on that side of the blue wall, are taught from day one that you guys are the good guys. You're the ones that we're supposed to go to if shit like this is going down, or if we need help, or if there's a problem. And you guys are just like us, except that you have a brotherhood that will back you up no matter what, so that it's always us versus them. You know what I mean? And so this show felt like it was ironic that I'm reading that book and talking to him about doing an interview with him, and then watching this, and you see the blue wall totally at work here, and then how the blue wall extends into the courtroom. You know what I mean? And then it's the green wall because it's all about money. You know what I mean? It's I don't know, man. It's just shocking. Like, all of the institutions, even like when you think about movies and TV shows that were formulaic or procedural, and the whole idea of like the bad guys didn't need much more motivation other than they were just sort of bad guys. Like they're either drug dealers or they're, crime bosses. And it was all just about expanding wealth and expanding territory and expanding influence. But now the bad guys are becoming of pop culture even, and maybe it's because it's a reflection of this shit like this. The bad guys are becoming the people at the top of the government, the people running the municipalities, the lawyers and the judges and the corrupt people. It's like almost like there never really was a true like good side of the law, or a true altruistic side of the government, or a true like altruistic form of what we're all kind of agreeing is the way it's supposed to be in this shared reality that we're all participating in, this simulated universe that we're all parts of. So it's a tough thing. I could understand this being uncomfortable for people to watch, and definitely an uncomfortable conversation to participate in, probably.
Well, not everybody's a Vic Mackey. I mean, not everybody wearing the uniforms of Vic Mackey, but this does show that that side is not angelic. They are not wrapped in pure white. I mean, and that's what I grew up believing.
Yeah.
That's what I grew up believing. And reality is that they are people, and read the Stanford experiment. I mean,
Oh, which is another. It's on Netflix. You could watch that now.
yeah, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, I mean, that's just the way it is. That's just,
Yeah,
you know,
messed
and
up, man.
you know, this is that power is flaunted, I believe, and I think you get to see that. I
Yeah,
really think that you get to see that there is a definite power structure, you know, and I don't want to hear some judge apologize 10 or so years after the fact saying, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have this or maybe I shouldn't have that.
yeah.
No,
Fuck
you
you.
shouldn't have done it at the time, but you were so sucked into this network that, you know.
Yeah, like he didn't detail what he got. It's like, if I hadn't done that at that time, well, then I wouldn't be a judge here now, and I wouldn't be a Supreme Court justice here now. It's like, well, fuck you then, dude. All right, you're saying you're sorry about it now. It's the same. It's funny. I got into a political conversation with somebody on Facebook, and it was about one of these incidents that got caught on tape that then get shared on Facebook and get viral, and someone was defending the person who everybody else who watched the video clearly saw right away was the person that at the fault, at the wrong. And they said something to me like, well, dude, you know, didn't you just post something on Facebook about how some guy cut the line while you were waiting for the bus and that you told him to go fuck himself or something? It's like, what if that was the only moment somebody experienced of you? And I'm like, well, if they were in the line, they would have seen the dude cut the line and they would have heard the dude apologize, just saying sorry about that. And I wanted to be like, instead of saying eat shit, which is what I said, because I don't feel like spending a lot of time on this with some asshole who's going to cut an entire line of people. Don't tell me you're sorry if you didn't get the fuck up off the bus and go to the back of the line. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're sorry about that, but you still jumped on the bus and took your fucking seat. And now there's somebody who's been standing here for 40 minutes at the end of this line who's not going to be able to get on. So the person who was trying to use that as an example of that could be a bad example of my character didn't take into account that fact. They were like, you know, it didn't really matter. You got on the bus. And I'm like, yeah, but somebody else fucking didn't, dude. And again, don't make a hollow apology and expect that to be okay. You can't sit in the seat on the bus that you cut the line to get to and say, oh yeah, sorry about that. Fuck you. If you're sorry, get up, get off the bus, get to the end of the line and wait for the goddamn next one if it fills up. That's what being sorry would be. Okay. And so it's the same shit with this judge.
Taking a little sliver of something and making it the whole thing, you know. So that's the thing is, and this is kind of my closing statement on this part of it, and talking about, you know, people using things out of context to get to their point. Religious people don't argue with me about religion, because if they quote a scripture verse to me, I will ask them what it says the line before and the line after.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you have to get more of the story that way, you know. I mean, and that's the thing here is, you know, they take one little piece and they use that as the foundation, and they say, but I know there's a whole bunch of stuff outside in the panorama, but we really only want you to look at this one little itty bitty thing. You know, I only want you to look at Dave telling some guy to fuck himself for cutting in line on a bus. What I don't want you to look at is the person that's been there all that time that has now been inconvenienced. I don't want you to look at the fact that the person said they were sorry and then still did the thing. I punch you in the face and then say, oops, I'm sorry. Doesn't take it away, especially if I punch you a second time, which that's what that person would do. By using a small piece of something, that is what is done here time and time again to make a point. And it's that snippet mentality that society seems to now adhere to that is causing people to just jump off on random crap that has no basis in reality and make that their whole world. I mean, flat Earth is the latest example, but there have been more, and there'll be many after.
Yeah, man, it's nuts. Yeah, I'm with you, man, because this gets to be a tough thing to keep talking about, and you definitely need to take breaks. I would say if you're binging this show, maybe do it in the 4-episode chunks that we suggested, if you can make it that many, because multiple hours in a row starts to wear on you, especially with this one, because I think probably one of the reasons that the documentary is so aligned with the defense's side is because it's such an obvious and blatant sort of smack in the face of what we all expect the legal system to be working like. So can only hope that there's a little bit more clarity. And if already, I would say the one suggestion we'll make before we leave for today, install a fucking camera above your stairs, guys. Everybody, install a motion activated security cam above every stairwell you've got. And that way, if everybody does that and we have somebody eventually fall downstairs and get multiple lacerations on their head and wind up in a pool of blood, and then their spouse was found guilty of murder, and you have the footage of them actually falling down the fucking stairs, I have a feeling that maybe a lot of people, at least in goddamn Durham, North Carolina, will be exonerated well after the fact, you fucking pricks. All right. Well, yeah, I know we're not supposed to put our opinion in it so much, but thank God I'm not a quarter-pointed medical examiner throwing all this extra flavor on top of my findings. And when we come back next time, you'll hear about people beyond the medical examiner, like blood experts and all kinds of assholes who have federal clearance doing all kinds of shit that you used to reserve strictly for stuff in the movies. This was stuff that would be done in the movies by people being blatantly fake. But now we're finding out that the truth is stranger than fiction. Wow, this is starting.
2001, it was happening.
This is starting to sound like an Nancy Grace show. So fuck her. Fuck all you guys for thinking this guy was guilty. And fuck Durham, North Carolina's legal system. I really hope nothing ever happens to me down there. I'm going to avoid
over. Dude, you got to take long circles around that town from here on out.
I'm avoiding North Carolina. I mean, I'm avoiding it forever from now on. But yeah, dudes, this is just nuts. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back. This is going to exist in a couple different formats in a couple different places, so just keep your eyes on hollow9ine.com to find out where the podcast Under the Stairs, the Hollow9ine Network's investigation into the Netflix series The Staircase, a spin-off of our Mindhunter podcast. My God, this is like 15 subtitles. We'll be back with more after this.